Okay, right. G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming along today. Today, here in Canberra, we have Billboard Battalion. We have Wade Northhausen and his crew from Billboard Battalion. We also have Carl Leopold, the voice from the north, down, and quite a few wonderful people here to support what's happening here today. Yeah, well done, guys. Absolutely. Now, as you all know, or you should know, Wade has been fighting this fight for a long period of time, and he's been exposing what's going on with the takeover of by the United Nations and the One World Government system that's coming here to Australia by stealth. Now, I looked around before, and I had some of the federal police guys here with me, and we looked at the signs behind us, the flag poles, and there's no flags up there, and said, well, what's going on with those flags? And I said, oh, they're doing a bit of work on those flag poles. I said, yeah, okay, why? And they said, oh, we don't know. I said, oh, they're probably preparing to put the new United Nations flag up there. And they said, oh, what do you mean? I said, well, you may not know, but this is what's happening, and it's not being announced publicly on ABC or Channel 7. They're not going to let you know because the whole of the country will uprise. So this is what's going on, and Wade is here today. I said they're incrementally making steps that are heading in this direction. We signed up with the World Health Organization. We signed amendments, and they want to bring in a treaty with the World Health Organization, and to hand over our sovereignty and our rights to a foreign entity, a non-elected entity run by globalists, to take control of our medical autonomy, our ability to make decisions for ourselves, so that the World Health Organization can call lockdowns or climate emergencies at their leisure when it suits them. And as I told these federal police guys, this is not just happening here in Australia, it's a global thing. And it's happening everywhere, but they are not publicly announcing it because the world would riot. And it's our job to alert people, and Wade has been doing an outstanding job for many years now, and he calls a spade a spade. He's a true farming man, and as you know, all the farmers, all Australian farmers are renowned for their upfrontedness, and they see it and they say it. They call it as it is, no wishy-washy stuff. So you don't get that from Wade, and all you get is the truth. It can be a bit brutal, and it certainly is in this occasion, because what's happening is very brutal and very disturbing. But Wade is a man for speaking honestly and truthfully. So he'll give you the detail on what is on the agenda for this week's sitting of Parliament, and where it is going to lead us to, which is very concerning, and everyone needs to become aware of it. So without further ado, I will hand over to Wade. So, Wade.
Thanks very much, Fraser, and a big thanks to Fraser too for setting up the organisation today with the Australian Federal Police here and the staff from the security here at Parliment House, bringing down the marquee and so on, and pushing out what we've been doing here. So I just wanted to say a big thanks to Fraser and the people who have helped him to do this. Very big thanks to the crowd that we've got here. Not 100 million people. We haven't filled the MCG, but at the end of the day, this was very, very short notice. We decided to do this because we needed to have something out front of Parliment House, and we thought it's going to be really great to have some additional Australians here, other than just Billboard Battalion, who've been doing what we've been doing here at Parliament for quite a number of months now. And you know, it's going to be great to have a few other people in the gallery as well to put a bit of pressure on these politicians, particularly these senators, because it's in their hands now what we're here to talk about today is the National Environmental Protection Agency bill, and it's passed the lower house. It went through the House of Crime, the House of Criminals, the House of Traders, and this stuff, it's going to affect everybody, but it does have an enormous bearing on our Australian farmers, our Australian agriculture. So I just want to say for a start, you know, we've had a fair bit of great support at very short notice from a number of the people who do live streams and channels and so on. And, you know, a lot of people didn't get here to Canberra today. We normally try and do things on a weekday when Parliament's sitting. However, so many people have sort of said, well, can you do it on a weekend because we can't leave work and take time off work to go to political things. And so that's fair enough. We did it on a weekend. It's a Sunday. And Parliament is sitting here tomorrow, which is Monday the 24th of November 2025. And so we'll be here to do what we can. We'll be doing more interviews with politicians here and trying to keep the pressure on the ones who are going to be voting. And what we've seen recently is that the Labor Party, absolute traitors to this country, they've handed over so much power to the World Health Organization. And just to give you a bit of an idea, Mark Butler, who is the Federal Minister for Health, allegedly, with Albanese and all the rest of them there in the front bench of the Labor Party, signed us up to the World Health Organization, international health regulations, and the One Health policy, which is basically an international treaty where we cede our sovereignty. We give the World Health Organization power over our country, power to run it, power to do whatever they want. So I'm just trying to find a spot here where the wind's not quite on this microphone. So therefore, this is a coup, it is a takeover, and the World Health Organization is a hostile foreign entity. They represent the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, who want to destroy our country, and a big part of that is our farmers. So we'll have a bit of a look through some of the things here, and we'll talk about what's happened recently and how that affects what's going on now and what's going to go on into the future. So people may have heard of the United Nations Agenda 21 and the United Nations Agenda 2030. And we've heard some people over many, many years have talked about the one world government, where countries lose their identity. They lose their right to govern themselves. That the decisions made in a country are now made overseas, and it's looking like being Geneva in Switzerland. So for anybody who thinks that Australia is still a sovereign country, you better have a very serious second thought about that. And to everybody who says, oh yes, under the Constitution, they can't do this and they can't do that and they can't do something else. Well, you're right, under the Constitution they can't, so that tells you the Constitution is dead. They have wrecked it. So I just wanted to say a big thanks to Carl Liebold from Voice of Freedom, who's come down from Queensland to be here today. We're also got coverage and support from Nicola Charles, and she runs a White Rabbit podcast in Victoria, Melbourne, Victoria. Robin from Courage is a Cure will be posting our stuff on her program, which and Robin comes from Western Australia. Dave and Kaz from the New South Wales podcast called Stop the Rot. So we've got quite a lot of coverage from people around Australia now who are going to be bouncing our stuff around. So I think that at such incredibly short notice, a big thanks to everybody who supported us and everybody who will share this. We need to share this information as far as we can. And when people say, what can we do? Part of what we can do is send this stuff to all your federal and state politicians and say, we do not want this. We want to push back. We do not want our government ceding sovereignty, and our government lies to us all the time. They tell you that this is great for Australia. It's all about protecting the environment and climate change. It's all lies, every bit of that. They are barefaced liars. And we'll touch on the CDC bill too during this today. So a great big thanks to all the people, and once again to Fraser Buchanan who helped us to organise this, did a lot of the legwork to sort of take a bit of pressure off that we were doing. So yeah, we'll touch base on the stuff, as I said, the WHO requirements as per the arrangement that we got tied up by the 19th of July 2025. We've got, I want to touch base on some of what's happened over the last 20 or 30 years with regard to our farmers, because this bill that we're looking at now, this National Environmental Protection Agency bill, is going to have a huge, massive impact on our farmers. And if we look at the history of what's happened already, you can see where this is going. And they've done this here domestically, and what they want is to set it up so that the World Health Organization makes the new decisions and the new rules on what happens to, in part, Australian farmers, but also every other Australian. This reaches out to everybody. So we saw quite a few years ago that the government had a snap overnight banning of live cattle exports out of Western Australia, heading to Indonesia. And what did that do? People might think they're just trying to, save cattle or something like that. But what that did is that caused a big part of a collapse in the Northern Australian beef industry. And that is the intention of it. As we're going to see, they've done everything they possibly can to destroy our farmers, send them broke, and have a massive big transfer of farmland and resources to some of our, just give a second there, some of our farmland resources being handed over to multinational corporates. And that appears to be one of their strategies, because many of these multinational corporates are actually part of the World Economic Forum. Through the agencies of things like BlackRock, through the agencies of things like State Street and Vanguard, these massive great investment companies are buying up huge amounts of Australian land and water. The other thing that we need to keep in mind, there's a lot of Australian superannuation companies who are now involved with international bodies, and they also are buying up enormous amounts of our farmland, our water and other resources. So what happened is, when they brought in the whole idea of your superannuation, forced superannuation, putting it into these companies, what they were actually doing was putting together a very intelligent slush fund where you, the taxpayers, actually put up the money for the multinational corporates to buy up our private land and water and put Australia at enormous disadvantages. So that was a very, very clever strategy, and that's what they did there. I wanted to talk about the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, and for those who know about that, it has devastated huge numbers of farmers. It sent them broke, and it turned water into a tradable commodity, which it never used to be. When you bought a farm, the water allocation came with it. That's it. You couldn't move it. And under John Howard, they broke up the water. They what they call unbundled it from the land, and then the water could be bought by absolutely anybody. So therefore, that created an additional level of things that you had to buy. So that has caused enormous destruction in our farmers. And the entire Murray-Darling Basin Plan, it's supposedly an environmental plan. Well, it's totally fraudulent, absolutely bona fide, drop-dead fraud. It is lies, it is scams, it is cons. And if we look at a lot of what we see coming from South Australia around the Coorong and the lower lakes of South Australia, the mouth of the Murray, a great place to look at is Darren de Bordeley has a site Murray-Darling Basin myths. Incredible, great information there. So I suggest, have a look at that, and you'll see exactly how fraudulent the Murray-Darling Basin plan is, but it's following the agenda of sending our farmers broke to destroy our food production. This is a big part of the scam. This is what it's about. We saw just recently in Western Australia, the government also said, well, they're going to ban live exports of sheep out of WA. So once again, we've got government policy that attacks and destroys huge numbers of farmers, because the live sheep export industry is very, very important to mixed farming, particularly in Western Australia. So they blew that to pieces, and the next thing you know, we've got more farmers who are getting out, the sheep industry is collapsing, and this is their intention, because the UN and the WEF and the WHO are saying we need to get rid of meat. We can't have meat. Meat is so bad for climate change. So you start to see a bit of a pattern forming, whereas the things that these people are doing are attacking our farmers. And at the minute, we haven't even talked about the WHO plan or the new power that they have. But this is just to give you context and where this is going. So we've seen under the so-called man-made climate change crap that they're now creating computer-generated modelling on areas and regions and zones. Now, this stuff never existed before, but it exists now. And what they're saying is that under the threat of climate change, we're going to have to rezone farmland and area and where you can actually live, where you can have houses, where you can have towns, the whole thing. They're going to have to rezone all this. And every one of them is going to say, no, you can't live here, you cannot conduct farming, you cannot have industry, construction, mining, and this is what this is all about, giving the WHO the power to shut it down. This is why we're talking about this new Environmental Protection Agency bill. This is what it's about, giving an international terrorist organisation the power to shut down our country. That is literally what it's about. And you'll hear this a bit today, but the politicians who are going to be inside the house behind me tomorrow could possibly be voting tomorrow to bring in this bill, and that bill will give the WHO the power to shut down you, your life, your ability to stay alive, you and your families. So these zones are a part of what they're doing, and once again, so far we haven't had this international organisation with full power over our government. But the sad facts are that these organisations already have power over our governments. Anybody who votes for anything of this stuff, any policy coming from the WHO, they are terrorists. They've sold you and your country out, and they have already got them. One way or another, they've got them. So we look at now something that's unfolding in enormous capacity across Australia, is renewable energy. Now, the whole fraud that we've got to get rid of coal-fired baseload power under, once again, you guessed it, climate change, the crap and the lies. So what the renewable energy infrastructure in particular is doing, it's infringing on enormous amounts of Australian farmland. Now, in Victoria, the impact on farmers is going to be monumental. It's enormous. In fact, if this thing goes to fruition, they're saying that 70% of Victoria's farmland will be under the footprint of renewable energy infrastructure. Now, that is enormous and catastrophic. So how serious are these people? What are they on about? And what are they prepared to do to ram through these farmer killing and community and food production killing weapons? So in Victoria, we've seen farmers jack them up and say, no way, we're not putting up with this, you're not coming onto our land, because in many cases the infrastructure is going to devastate half of their farms, that cut them in half, destroy a lot of what they can do. Irrigation areas wrecked, wiped out. They can't move headers and machinery underneath these things in broadacre cropping. So just imagine what that's going to do. So the farmers in the Victorian regions of Western Victoria, the Mallee, the Wimmera, those areas there, and even over as far as our way and around Echuca, heading towards Shepparton, they're saying no way. So what has happened is in Victoria, the Jacinta Allen Labor government has now, with the help of a few others in the Victorian Parliament, other sellouts and traitors who hate our country, they have brought in laws now where the likes of Transmission Company Victoria have right to go onto their place, and you can't do a thing about it. So at the minute, we've got a standoff happening in Victoria with farmers who are now saying access is denied. They're putting up physical barriers across driveways. There are many, many people who are turning up there and forming human chains and picket lines to stop these people from getting access. Billboard Battalion actually reported on one of these events only 3 or 4 days ago across in the Mallee. So if you want to see what happened there, that's on Billboard Battalion. So we have literally a government that is waging war on, in particular, our farmers. And so what the Allen government of Victoria has done is they've said anybody who tries to stop these renewable energy companies coming onto their land could face $12,000 fines. Now these companies, they want to destroy their farms and their livelihood and their businesses. That's what's going on here. So this is people fighting for their life, for their existence, for everything they've ever had and worked for. And the government wants to take it away. This is, as I say, before the WHO is given enormous powers to force this stuff through, where it takes control of our country, where there is no parliamentary oversight, which is pretty pointless anyway, because as we can see, the parliament is completely corrupt. They are on board with the destruction of our country. Most of them are, not all, but most. So we look at what's happening here in farming. We've been pushing the National Farmers Federation fairly hard and saying, what's going on? Why are you people at the National Farmers Federation not representing our farmers? So we've just got a new president at the National Farmers Federation. We've just got rid of David Johinke, and so we've got a new bloke. Hamish is the new president there. He's from the Cotton Growers Association. So we've been trying to get to do an interview of Hamish, who originally said he would. However, now he, for some strange reason, seems to have changed his mind. And we're wondering if Hamish has, I don't know, been kidnapped, something like that. Not sure. But he does seem to turn up where all the celebrities are. He does seem to turn up in places in I think it's Queensland, if memory serves me correctly, with all the high rollers and so on. So well done, Hamish. Maybe you could remember our Victorian farmers are at war with the government. They're at war. They're fighting for their lives, as we have seen with many other agricultural sectors across Australia. Now, what I always talk about at this point, we saw Hamish McIntyre speaking about how the National Farmers Federation, it supports net zero. It supports getting to net zero. Well, how about we tell you where you can go and shove that, right? Because the support of net zero is what is destroying Australian farmers and is going to wipe out a hell of a lot more. That speaks directly to this National Environmental Protection Agency, which is nothing more than a weapon to be used to attack Australian farmers as just one of the cohorts. So I suggest, Hamish McIntyre, you meet with me, mate. We'd like to do an interview with you. You said you would originally, and now you've backed out, you've piked out, mate. What's going on? So farming sector wants to know what's happening and why you're supporting government policy and WHO policy that is going to attack and destroy Australian farmers. What's going on, mate? So these are some of the points that we're making on this bill here. And why is this so important? And we've got already the EPBC Act, the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. We've got all sorts of acts and so on. Why are these things, why do we need new ones? Well, we might ask the same question about the bill that passed last time we were here in Canberra, which was the Centre for Disease Control Bill. And what that's all about is creating new legislation and new bodies that is required under Australia signing up to the World Health Organisation. They require new bodies to be created so the World Health Organisation can then control them and have the power to do whatever it wants. So that's what this is about. The bodies, the things that they want to create are the Centre for Disease Control, are the National Environmental Protection Agency, and also we saw in 2015 amendments made to the Biosecurity Act, the Federal Biosecurity Act. So we're seeing changes being made all over Australia, both at federal levels and state levels. And every one of these things is designed to wipe out more Australians somehow, more Australian business. They're talking about all these new diseases in animals. This stuff's unheard of. This stuff's never been heard of. Well, they are deliberately creating fear to use as a weapon against our people. This is precisely what this is all about. And these new bodies are to give them the power, once they've created this artificial fear, to take action and start shutting down our country and locking down our people. This is a big part of the whole thing. And as I say, this is a requirement of the agreement with the World Health Organisation. So, some of the things that we want to have a look at here today, and I think you'll be quite surprised, is what they're doing to be able to shut people up from actually speaking against this. Their whole action is to shut you down and then shut you up. That's what it's about. So we wanted to have a look at the Centre for Disease Control, seeing as I spoke about that just before. And the new Centre for Disease Control is an abhorrent, it is a shocking body. It is basically the sort of thing that the Nazis would be proud to have, because it centralises all the power to one body. And some of the things that Mark Butler said, the Minister for Health, when they were talking about this, and some of the speeches in Parliament were talking about how this is going to be so great, this Centre for Disease Control. They're going to be able to give advice. They're going to be able to put things together and collaborate between different organisations. The Centre for Disease Control will be the central point of information. I wonder where I've heard that before. I just wanted to say that the central point for information, that's a term that we heard from Jacinda Ardern, the ex-Prime Minister of New Zealand, #1 terrorist. And she was saying back in the COVID fraud that the government is to be the only source of information on COVID. And that speaks directly to how dangerous this CDC is that these terrorists in the Parliament voted in last sitting. And I just want to talk a little bit about some comments made by this bloke, an adjunct professor, Terry Slevin, CEO of Public Health Association of Australia. Now, this adjunct professor, Terry Slevin, in my opinion, should never be giving advice on the health situation of anything, because he supports this rubbish, this crap. And as we saw back in COVID, the lies that the government told, point blank lies and the shutting down of information from doctors, medical experts who were correct when they said COVID was a con and that the so-called vaccines were weapons that were designed to kill people, and the people who got them would continue to die for years after these injections. There were people who died on site at the very point when they were given this, within minutes of it. They died in the surgery, in the place where they got them. And from then on in, we've seen an endless cascade of sportsmen and women dropping dead, elite sportsmen. We've seen people who are now riddled with cancer, people who are riddled with blood clots, with heart attacks, strokes, and this stuff is designed to attack your organs. So we're seeing people who are dying all over the countryside from the COVID-19 vaccines, which I call a vaccine poison. But the point for this CDC bill is there were international medical experts who warned that this was going to happen, that this was the only possible result. And they were shut down. They were censored. And in many cases, other countries' Centres for Disease Control, under the direction of the WHO, called them, people who were spreading misinformation, anti-vaxxers, when these people were dead set correct. They were spot on. And this comes to the very point of what we're saying here. So this adjunct professor, loser, Terry Slevin, he's a liar, CEO of Public Health Association of Australia. Do not believe one word that this bloke says, because some of the things he said are blah, blah, blah. The CDC can get cracking and be ambitious in its goals, really. And then he says, with Australia facing challenges like the threat of bird flu, okay, and public health misinformation. Now, I want you to focus on that word misinformation, because that's going to come up very, very soon. And falling immunisation rates. The CDC, here we go, the CDC will provide a central, credible source of information. No, they won't. You are a liar. The central credible source of information are a bunch of lunatics, sociopaths, who are in the business of killing people. Let's just get something straight. And he says here, we don't know when the next infectious pandemic may come. I put it to you that you do, because the people from the WHO are the ones who are organising it, and they're the ones who make it happen. But this agency helps us get prepared. No, it doesn't. And when it comes, it will lead the response. No, what the CDC will lead is an organised attack on the people of Australia and the world, and it will help to kill people. That is its specific, sole and only objective. When you talk about the CDC gets cracking and be ambitious in its goals, yeah, let me tell you what its real goals are, mate. Its real goals are to lie to people, lock them down, inject them with poison, shut down their ability to have food, and tell lies. That's what it's about. And we said here, he's talking about public misinformation. So they are in the business of trying to shut down your right to speak when you know that they are lying to you. And they're in the business of trying to shut down your ability to speak on this climate change fraud as well. And we'll get to that in a minute. They talk here about bird flu. Now, that's an interesting thing, because we've spoken to a lot of people who are in the industry, and they tell us that bird flu is nowhere near as bad as what they're saying, that things can be fixed and cured, etc. And some of the birds develop antibodies, which then can help to immunise whole flocks. So we need to have a bit closer of a look at that. The policy of the World Health Organization in these things where they magically find some sort of bird flu or some sort of something somewhere is to kill the entire flock or the entire herd or whatever it is they want to do. It's a total devastation of animals, farm animals. This is its objective. So in Canada recently, Billboard Battalion interviewed Katie Pasitny, who runs Universal Ostrich Farms in Canada. And their body over there, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, who are basically terrorists, went onto their place, and after a long protruded battle through the courts and what have you, with massive numbers of Canadian mounted police, those disgusting scumbags, massacred their emus. Now, why am I talking about this, you might say? Well, these emus, the reason they said they wanted to massacre them is because about a year ago, some of these ostriches got bird flu. And that's okay. Some of them passed away, but the ones that were left developed, according to the medical experts, what they call immunity, natural immunity. And therefore, those birds had the capacity to create a real vaccine that could be used to immunise birds against bird flu. Now, this is my understanding. And so what did the government do in Canada? Instead of using those ostriches to create some sort of a bird flu vaccine, they in fact shot them all. They did not take the opportunity to create some sort of an immunisation for bird flu. Now, read into that what you will, but this is all under the direction of the WHO. So when they talk about wanting to keep you safe, and the CDC is about keeping you safe, and this clown, this adjunct professor, Terry Slevin, whatever, talks about some great challenges like the threat of bird flu, it appears to me that they had an opportunity to create a real vaccine for bird flu, and they shot all the animals and destroyed them and got rid of them. So I'd like to have a bit of a discussion with this clown, adjunct professor Terry Slevin and co, from the CEO, from the Public Health Association of Australia, because I think they're the Public Liars Association of Australia. And as many of us know, what they did through the so-called COVID scam was criminal. It was dishonest, it was a setup, and it was designed to kill people. So I'd love the opportunity to interview this adjunct professor Terry Slevin. We're going to reach out to this crowd, and I'll mate who's the contact for them, and say, what about we do an interview, because I think that your information is dishonest. I think it's wrong, and we need to investigate what you're talking about. So just to sort of put a fine point on it, when they say this CDC is going to be the sole information, the shining light, the beacon of all information, this thing is a disaster. They want to use it as some sort of a sledgehammer to shut down any other professional advice. They want to use it to shut down real doctors, not the ones on the take. And what we saw in Australia here was, just in the short term, many people died because the so-called vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, were given specific authority to be used in the United States. And these things, for a start, the Pfizer vaccine was not what they presented to be tested in the first place. It was a completely different thing and had very serious poisons in it. The makeup of this mRNA poison, the makeup can only be used to attack human bodies and kill people. That's how it's designed. And medical experts from across the world say this. So when you talk about the CDC operating under WHO, hell no. Not even close. You go and shove that. You people are in the business of killing others, and you damn well know it. And when we look here in Australia, we've got a crowd called APRA, which basically is the governing body over all medical people in Australia. They shut down doctors who wanted to save lives. APRA actively involved themselves in genocide, because we had medical professionals in Australia who said there are treatments for COVID, and the APRA banned doctors from saving people's lives and giving them those treatments. So this is all under the medical institution, which would be the CDC. The people who are going to be advisors and so on in the CDC, these are the people who kill others. They deliberately killed others. So we've seen a huge amount of this stuff. We've seen that people said, and these are doctors who from overseas have said, and Australia actually, that the treatment for COVID-19 was ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine in combination with a few other things. Now, the doctors were banned from telling their patients this, or prescribing it, or even speaking about it. Can you understand this? And this is what the CDC now wants to create, an even more powerful body to advise us on our health responses. This adjunct professor, Terry Slevin's a clown. But sadly, so many of the medical hierarchy went along with him. They went along with it. So when we see Mark Butler say how this is all about safety and everything like that, you better believe he's a liar. As is was ScoMo at the time, as is Albanese now, Wong, the whole lot of them. These people are liars, and they're in the business of getting you and your families killed. And the result of what they already have done, we see people every day in Australia and around the world dropping dead. We see people coming up being diagnosed with turbo cancer, with all these other things, organ failure, organ shutdown. This is all happening because of the medical advice that the likes of the Centre for Disease Control would hand totally over to the World Health Organization, the very criminals who got people killed in the first place. So this is how serious this is. And this would be a part of giving the WHO absolute control over our country, quite literally over our country. And just in case, you know, we've had a few people every now and again will say, oh no, look Wade, that's all just conspiracy theories, it's all just rubbish, blah, blah, blah. So I want to show you here, this is what they call, I'll just come a little bit closer, I might not, we'll get feedback, but this is called the Australian Centre for Disease Control Bill 2025. A bill for an act to establish the Australian Centre for Disease Control and for related purposes. Now, that went before the Senate in Australia here on the 5th of November. We were here and actually saw it go through, be voted on and passed. So if there's any half-wits who say, what I'm saying is just conspiracy theories, it's not true, there's the bill, you clowns. And here, right now, in this hand, we have here the Parliament of Commonwealth of Australia, House of Representatives, National Environmental Protection Agency Bill 2025 Explanatory Memorandum. So therefore, this is what they're going to present to the Senate. I expect it to be this week. This is equally as catastrophic and equally as dangerous. So we see in this, the Australian Centre for Disease Control Bill, they also talk about the Australian Department of Agriculture, the Australian Minister for Agriculture. Why would you see that? Because they're intending to impact farmers and agriculture. So the last sort of section of what I want to talk about here is just recently your ability to speak about things. Now we saw in the other things there, they're talking about misinformation. Misinformation, okay. Who could that be? So I'll tell you who is spreading misinformation. The government, the CDC, every government department, almost all of your mainstream media, all of the medical institutions who push this crap, these are the people spreading information, misinformation and disinformation. Now, I want to talk about something that's just happening now, unfolding as we speak. There's a thing called a Select Committee on Information Integrity on Climate Change and Energy. Wonder what that could be about. So it says here, part of its purview, to inquire, now wait for it for the misinformation bit, to inquire into the prevalence and impacts of misinformation and disinformation which relates to climate change and energy. Now the final report for this thing is due on the 24th of March 2026. So what they're talking about, and I've seen some of the evidence that's been given to this thing, it's quite literally a fraudulent setup to start putting in process the right for the WHO to shut down and make a criminal offence your right to say anything that doesn't fall into the government's line with regard to climate change. This is enormous stuff. This is huge. And therefore, this is our next battleground. We need to make sure this is defeated. We need every, and I'll put it to you, every industry body, every community organisation. This is the end of your world right now. If they get an opportunity to shut down your right and make it illegal to speak about something where the government attacks you, where the World Health Organization attacks you, this is the end of it's over. We're done. So therefore, everybody who watches this, we need to be fighting back against that now. We need to be pushing back now. And I've seen some of the people giving evidence in this Senate committee, and what I've seen is the panel, and in particular the Labor woman, I think she's the deputy chair of this committee, Michelle Raja, some crap or other. She's using that as an opportunity to attack, not just run some kind of a information session, but to attack people who would not support this, people who would speak out about this, people who would say they're opposing to the renewable energy fraud, the con. And in the future, anybody who would say, hang on a minute, under climate change, I don't want to be locked down in my house permanently. I don't want to be banned from being able to travel. I don't want to be banned from being able to buy more than a handful of food that's made in a laboratory. I don't want our farmers to be shut down. I don't want our coal industry, our manufacturing sector, whatever the hell's left of that. We don't want our construction industries to be shut down. We don't want to be told we cannot speak. And that is literally what this is about. This is where this is going, and this is what the entire sellout of most of these pathetic scumbag traitors behind me, when the Parliament's sitting, that's what they're setting you up for. And the World Health Organization is the realisation of the one world government. That is what it's about. And all these policies here, all these new laws, are to bring the one world government into being, to take full control over your country. And anybody who doesn't want to know about this, well, I'm telling you, you're going to know about it. It doesn't matter whether you want to or not. The most important thing is whether you want to know about it in time to try and fight back and stop it. We are in massive, massive trouble. But they've done this in such a way where they con the public. They brought in 30 years ago the whole crap about climate change. And now, therefore, you can't say anything against it unless you're a climate change denier. You can't say anything about massive, huge immigration at levels that is actually changing our country unless you're a racist. You can't say anything about the mRNA lethal poisonous injections they injected into people under the disguise of COVID-19 vaccines, because that's killing people. Because if you say anything about that, you're an anti-vaxxer. So we've got some pretty serious troubles on our hands. We've got some really serious troubles. So we've heard recently the likes of the Australian Federal Police, well, the leadership anyway, and the Australian Federal Police leadership are terrorists. They hate Australia. They are in the act of bringing in the laws or enforcing things, creating fictitious bodies that help the World Health Organization, the United Nations and the World Economic Forum from shutting you down. Because they've invented all sorts of little acronyms that they use, like the ones I just described, acronyms to turn the Australian people against those who are speaking out with honesty, with truth and with integrity. And the latest thing that we've seen is to say they're mounting some kind of an attack on people who would create disharmony in the community. So I put it to you first and foremost, your governments are the ones creating they're creating the troubles we've got in our communities, the friction, the wars, the hatred, the intolerance, the objectionability, the violence. Your governments are the ones who are doing that. So when they talk about disunity in our communities, they are the ones who are doing it. And so are the leadership of the Australian Federal Police, the leadership of the likes of ASIO, supposedly our protective things. These scum are killers. They know it. And they don't get to be in those positions if they are decent and honest, law-abiding people who want to protect the Australian citizens. Exactly the same as the E-Safety Commission, that E-Karen thing. You have to be prepared to be a part of an institution that is going to murder Australians to get that job. And that's exactly what she is. So when we talk about having your information shut down, censored, the whole digital identification thing, that's what that's about. 16-year-old bill to get onto the internet, that's all lies. They're not interested in protecting your 16-year-olds. They want to kill them, and they have done already with many of them. So that's all lies and fraud. So when we hear the Australian Federal Police say that they're going after people that call themselves sovereign citizens, that's the latest. That's the latest thing that they're trying to weaponise as some sort of domestic terrorists. When they talk about anti-vaxxers, when they talk about people who are anti-climate change fraud, the people who expose the truth, the people that say the climate hasn't melted the polar ice caps. We haven't seen countries under 30 metres of water because the polar ice caps melted. It hasn't happened. In fact, we've seen some of the South Pacific countries are actually a little bit higher. They're growing. Historical photos from 150 years ago prove that sites have not changed, only maybe a few inches. So the whole thing is a fraud, the whole thing is a con, and therefore we thought we'd put on a rally here at Parliament House at incredibly short notice. And that's because we don't make the government's agenda, and we didn't know specifically when this thing's going to come up, but I expect the government to try and guillotine this through Parliament, and I expect it as soon as possible. So therefore we made a decision, we'll throw this rally together, we'll come here, we'll invite people to come, and we're so grateful for the ones who have come and shown terrific support. This is something where we need to have crowds of people here in the Parliament seeing what's happening, going, hang on, we don't want these criminal laws made by the criminals who are sitting in the Parliament and giving criminal organisations like the World Health Organisation the keys to our country, and they get a chance to light the fuse on the bomb to blow our country up. And that is exactly the result that's going to happen. So we have to push back as hard as we can. This bill, I think that these scumbags will have the numbers. I've heard rumours that the coalition are going to back this. We need to get on and phone, text, email, whatever you can, turn up at your politicians' offices and give them a legal, non-violent but hard time. Put the pressure on them, because we cannot allow this to get over the line. And I believe the coalition under that dropkick Susan Ley is going to capitulate. I believe she's going to go down on her knees, and I believe that she's going to get this across the line as her last great act of defiance, because I don't think she's going to be the leader of the Liberal Party come early next year. She should never have been the leader of anything, let alone a political party. But I think that she's 100% committed to being a servant, some sort of, whatever you want to call it, to the World Economic Forum and the UN and the WHO. And she's doing everything she can to prove to them that she will sell her country and her people out. She will help get people murdered just to stay in favour with these filthy terrorist scumbags. So we need to push back on everything and everybody that we possibly can. And if whoever has a platform coming up to this so-called misinformation and disinformation impacts with regard to climate change and energy, we need to be on the front foot now. This is a call to action. Sorry, action. Yes, we won't say arms. We'll say call to action to start pushing back. Otherwise, you won't have a voice. Your internet will be shut down. Your right to speak, you will be arrested in the street just for saying something. And just remember, in England right now, there are people in jail, literally, for making a post. People literally for just speaking on the street and saying something are now in jail. So if you don't think that these filthy scum are going to do that here, then I don't know, you're cooked, you're over, you're done. It's just a matter of time until they come and get you. And if you're not prepared to take some action, then you deserve for them to come and get you, because this is your life right now, your family, your kids, your grandkids' lives right now. It's almost over. So we need you to help us push back. Otherwise, you are going to help usher in the end of Australia. It's that simple. All right, people. So we might pull the pin here. We're going to be in there again tomorrow. We'll come back to you tomorrow with some more upgrades and reports. Big thanks to Carl, who's turned up here, and I think is going to probably spend some time in Parliament with us. It's good to see that we've actually got some supporters and live streamers and other podcasters and so on now who are giving us great support. We've been the only ones here, but it's good to see others are starting to turn up now and give us a hand and prove to the politicians that there are actually Australians who do care about the country, and the politicians do not have just a free ride to sell us out for whatever favours that they get. All right, thanks very much, everyone. Wade Northhausen here for Billboard Battalion. Today is Sunday, the 23rd of November 2025, live from Canberra, ACT in Australia. Thank you.